1 minute, inshallah. We're gonna start. Inshallah. 1 minute, inshallah. We're gonna start. For the kids, little kids, please invite your parents to share us and attend and listen to the information. It's very important for everybody in the family. So the little kids, we have 7 years old, we have 8, 9. So I hope to see the parents beside the kids to listen to the information they're gonna receive. It's very important. We have two guests, Mr. Charles, Mr. David, gonna give us their experience and how to protect youth and how to protect the family members from the issues on the internet. Let's start, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you all, especially our honor guest speakers, Mr. Don Charles Wood and Mr. David Sanchez. Let me give you a little information about our institute. It is Aman Institute, non-profit organization that promotes youth, intellectual, spiritual, and mental safety, and provides solutions to divine thoughts that lead to addiction and violence, extremism, and life failure. So today we are blessed guests, speakers today. Mr. Don Charles Wood is IT specialist, an Army veteran with over 25 years of experience with the administration and maintenance of IT system and network. Also, he is serving in a Church of Jesus Christ in Cobras Cove, Texas, and he and his wife have like 26 years, have 4 amazing sons. He gonna teach in session A, safety for the family on the internet, avoiding pornography, risky videos, gaming, and other internet and social media addiction. Also, we are welcome our guest speaker, Mr. David Sanchez, IT specialist and network planner for U.S. Army. He also served in the Church of Jesus Christ in Cobras Cove, Texas. He has 4 blessing children. He gonna teach us in session B, cybersecurity, online dark web protection against cyber criminals and other behind the screen that we have to protect our kids, our children from them, inshallah. Let's go with session A with Mr. Charles Wood and his speech about the issues that children and youth face on the internet. Mr. Charles Wood.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for having me today and for the opportunity to talk to the youth. That's something that's very important to me. As you said, my wife and I have 4 sons, and I feel like, well, my youngest just graduated high school and is now serving a mission. So I feel like the experience that we gained of raising our children and helping them avoid or navigate the dangers of everything online, just in life in general, but specifically the way that the internet developed and smartphones developed and all of that through their childhood and into adulthood. Just our experience as parents helping them navigate that, I think, prepared me for this more than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll step through, and we'll just go from there. So let's see. So excuse me. So yeah, safety for family on the internet. The first topic was pornography, and this is a quote from one of the leaders in our church, that pornography is a plague, and I think that we all can agree with this. I'll let you read that. It's a plague that is detrimental not only to a person's moral standing with God, but it can also destroy marriages and families and have an adverse impact on society. And I think that we are all on the same sheet of music as far as that is concerned. I referenced the website in the bottom right corner, fightthenewdrug.org, for some of the for the information for this segment. Excuse me. So there's, let me see if I can figure out how to minimize this. So one of the things that really caught my attention when I was preparing my remarks for regarding pornography was the overwhelming amount of advocacy for pornography. I was looking up the anti-porn movement, and actually came across a website, an article where apparently one of the popular repositories for pornography recently removed millions of videos because there was accusation by anti-porn advocates that the people in those videos were unwilling participants, or did not agree to the material being posted online. And this article was actually, they were saying it was a bad thing that all of this material was taken down because it was negatively affecting people's livelihoods. And I just, it really troubled me, but I wanted to share that because there are attitudes out there that this is not only good, but that it should be celebrated, and that it's a favorable way of occupation or something like that. So just know that there are a lot of opposing views when it comes to pornography. One of the, as you see here on the screen, pornography, one of the dangers of it is it can normalize sexual objectification. So ultimately what that means is that the more that you view and consume pornography, then you have a tendency to view individuals more in a more of a sexual nature, and which can lead you to overlook a lot of their other qualities, their God-given qualities that would that really mean a whole lot more than the way that they look or things like that. And that can have profound consequences in the way that that you view and treat others. So that's obviously a very negative side effect. It can easily become an escalating behavior, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Is it's similar to a drug in the way that it can be the way, I guess, it activates the receptors in your brain. And so what used to work, if you just dabble in looking at some pictures or things like that, after a while you don't get the same feeling, and so often you the individual finds himself wanting to consume more pornography or more extreme forms of it, and or do it more often, just to get the same response that they did when they began consuming it. And like I said, it can affect the brain like a drug, and research into how the brain works shows similarities between pornography addiction and other addictions, tobacco and drugs, and it also can affect your decision making and impair that. And then the way I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know anything about the ins and outs of how your brain develops, but the reference to this website talks about neuroplasticity and the way that our brains are constantly changing. They help us learn and complete tasks more efficiently, but apparently stimuli such as porn can trigger measurable changes that can actually in your brain that can negatively affect or influence our lives. So yeah, definitely some negative biological consequences from viewing pornography. And then also, like a drug, it can be very difficult to quit. It can be very addictive and often requires counseling or the help of outside parties to stop consuming pornography. Let's see. Okay, I usually want to ask questions, but so there was another topic was risky videos. So I was thinking about risky videos and what examples of their or where they might be found and things like that. And we've already discussed pornography. I feel like that's probably a big area of concern when it comes to video content. But I guess, well, I'll share a story. There was one time I was at a social event, and there was a large crowd of people, and I happened to ask someone. I think someone might have a hot mic if you can. But I was sitting behind someone, and they had pulled up a graphic video on their phone. And then they were watching it, and then there were children that were kind of looking over their shoulder, and it was extremely graphic and very offensive, and actually quite nauseating to me. And I was just shocked that they were letting children watch this. So that's one instance, and that actually has happened to my children at school, where I tried to, my wife and I would try to limit the content that they could access on their phones or computers or over the internet at home or whatever. And but people at school would come up to them with their phone and put it in front of them, and just say, "Hey, look at this." And so, despite all of our best efforts, you are still going to encounter material like that. But the efforts that you can make on your behalf, I guess, is you can. Well, a lot of it has to do with the social media platforms that you use. YouTube is the most common video social media platform, and they do a pretty good job of screening their content, moderating their content. If a objectionable video gets posted, it usually gets flagged and removed pretty soon. But there's other platforms that don't effectively moderate their content, and as a matter of fact, there's some that are specifically designed to avoid content moderation. And so I think everyone is probably familiar with Snapchat, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But where you can take a picture or a video and then once it's once it's watched, it disappears completely. But and there's some underlying problems with that too, that I'll talk about. But just know that despite the platform's efforts to moderate content, there will always be stuff that can leak through, and you just have to be aware of that. And then as an individual and as a parent, for those parents that are watching, find effective and suitable ways to avoid and protect against that. Okay, online gaming. So apparently these are some of the most popular games right now. I guess FIFA 22 hasn't come out yet, but there's a big buzz around it. So, a lot of people say, what's the big deal with online gaming? And I have some games on my phone that I like to play. I don't think that the point of this is not to say that it's bad in and of itself, but they create opportunities for negativity, and I'll address those. So first and foremost, a lot of people when they play online games, they play it for extremely long periods of time, which that becomes very troubling. And in the Old Testament, Proverbs 19:15, I cited this scripture: slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. Idleness is not good, and we should always be about doing good things, engaged in good things. And I have a couple quotes here that I'll share also. So there's a leader of our church. He's got a couple different quotes. And his concern is that some young women and men today ignore things as they really are, and they neglect eternal relationships, which, those with the people around us, our families, friends, and loved ones, for digital distractions, diversions, and detours that have no lasting value. And I think that's the most important thing to key in on, is that these things have no lasting value. Yet we would, if we get caught into this trap, we could be spending a large portion of our day and possibly our lives doing these things that of no lasting value, that are detrimental to our eternal relationships. I actually have a friend who some years ago, he was a coworker and a fellow soldier who had gotten, I would say, addicted to a video game, and he spent very much time playing this, and all the while neglecting his wife and his children. And his wife reached out to me. She had talked to him and tried to, share her feelings about how it was affecting the family, and he just simply couldn't. It didn't resonate. It didn't sink in. And so she asked me one day in desperation. I said, well, this is how you would disable his ability to connect to the internet on the computer. And so I had her remove the network card and showed her how to do that. And he came home and went, passed by his family and went to log in and could not connect to the internet. And she had taken and hidden the network card. And she said that he went into a fit of rage, and she feared for her safety. He was so consumed with this game that he was threatening his wife. And so clearly, when it gets to that point, it becomes a very bad thing. Like I said, games, I've got them. I play some games, but you can't let them consume your life or replace your relationships in real life. Another quote by this same leader in our church: a young woman or man may waste countless hours, postpone or forfeit vocational or academic achievement, and ultimately sacrifice cherish human relationships because of mind and spirit numbing video and online games. And hopefully you don't know anyone like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if you. Let's see. So one of the things is a lot of online games you can create your own avatar. You can it's almost like it's like a world it's like their own digital world. And so when you log in and you play, you make relationships and friendships. And I mean, I think I even remember an article about two people that got married. Their avatars got married in the online version of themselves, and it was like, to them it was real. It just, I don't know, I guess it was confusing to me, to someone that doesn't play or participate in stuff like that often. But people do take this stuff very seriously, and it's all it's computer mediated. It's but it's not a replacement for our real life, our physical experiences. Another thing that I don't remember if I made a note of this or not, but I do want to talk about how the content in some of the games is quite troubling. I knew a young boy whose mother would let him play online games because his father was not in the home, and when he played these games, there were other guys on, and it was kind of like his guy time that he would have been getting, in her mind, he would have been getting with his dad, but since he wasn't around, she let him participate in or play these games online and get his guy time in. But the games were not appropriate for a child of his age, and also the chat rooms, the online, the voice chat, where they're communicating with each other through the headsets, was just vile and very disturbing content. The things that they would say to each other and that say about each other and things like that. And that's all stuff that cannot be moderated. And so sometimes it's better to just avoid stuff like that altogether than to put yourself in a situation where you could be exposed to those things. And that's, not to mention the inappropriate content of the games themselves. And so I feel like with video games, that is probably one of the biggest threats to children, because it does seem to draw in children, and there's so much adult stuff on there. A survey of 30,000 gamers revealed that nearly 40% of men and 52% of women who play online games said their virtual friends were equal to or better than their real life friends. Think about that. And more than 25% of those gamers that responded indicated that the emotional highlight of their past week occurred in an online world. That is just, yeah. Spend some time in the real world. Okay. Other internet and social media addictions. So a couple things, I've only got a few minutes left. I talk about bad actors and catfishing. I think people kind of know what that's about. Your digital footprint, which my understanding is that children are learning this in school when they get issued laptops or iPads, things like that. But I guess it can never hurt to reemphasize it. Bullying, and then anonymity. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'll explain that. So bad actors. First of all, there's no way to determine that a person online really is who they say they are. You like to think that you can trust everyone, take them at their word, but know that that this is not always the case. And even if someone does present themselves, as yourself, maybe there's some things about themselves that they withhold or they elaborate on a little bit more, embellish. Even if you interact with someone that you do know, maybe a friend from school or from the neighborhood or something like that, maybe they're your friend today, but in 5 or 10 years, are they still going to be your friend? You know, friends have falling outs, and they maybe have disagreements and things like that. But if you share something with them today, and then they decide, you know, 5 years later you're not friends with them anymore, they might still have that information, that data that they could then share, and it could disrupt your life. Or maybe they currently do. Maybe they're acting on behalf of someone else, and they have malicious intent. So there's a story that I recently read about. There's a girl who had just gotten accepted to a college. It was an Ivy League school. She was very grateful to have been accepted and considered a blessing. But then someone that she had gone to school with, I think it was when she was about 15 years old, she had said something online, and someone in the present day shared this. They leaked it and to the college, and then the college ended up declining to accept her as a student. And so it was that was very difficult for her, and she was very upset about that. And so just know that, well, I'll talk a little bit more about your digital footprint, but know that anything that you put out there, whether it's publicly or even you share it with amongst friends, or, you know, on a Snapchat, and then someone could record it, things like that, and then use it to hurt you later. Okay, your digital footprint. Everything that you do online can be tracked and archived, and just expect that it will be. Even emails, things that you think are just between you and the receiving party, that's the easiest way. You know, you send an email, and then that could just get forwarded on through other people. It's very, very easy to replicate. And unlike a photograph, you know, when I was growing up, you take a picture and you get it developed, and you get one picture, and maybe you pay more to get 2 of them, and that was it. But now that digital picture can be replicated with speed, and it could be across on the other side of the world in a matter of seconds. And if you do it online, you should expect that to be happening. And like I said, I talked about Snapchat earlier. We hear a lot about people will share and say things on applications like that, who they feel like are only amongst friends, but then it gets leaked and shared with other people, which you know, maybe you didn't intend for that to be shared with other people. And then I talked a little bit, you know, about what you can do as a teen can impact your life for years to come. Know that when you apply for colleges, when you apply for positions in school, that they are going to screen your social media. They're going to look at all of that stuff. And so don't do something now as a young person that could negatively affect you in the future. Just don't do it. And then nefarious actors, and I talked about, you know, you got catfishing, and maybe someone that is pretending to be someone that they're not really, or even someone you think is a friend that may turn on you later. And then bullying. So we know that online bullying is a significant problem. It's led to, actually, some people have chosen to, you know, commit suicide because of the amount of bullying that they receive online. So this Quentin L. Cook, a leader in our church, he talked about this. He said, any use of the internet to bully, destroy a reputation, or place a person in bad light is reprehensible. What we are seeing in society is that when people wear the mask of anonymity, they are more likely to engage in this kind of conduct, which is so destructive to civil discourse. And when he said that mask of anonymity, it kind of stuck out to me, because online, you really do kind of have a sense of that. You feel like maybe because you're online, you can do things that you wouldn't otherwise do in person. But specifically anonymity, there are apps where you can, like Snapchat, you know, you take a picture, you share it, it's only with one other person. you might think, oh, well, my parents would never find out if I did this, or or if I said that. And so to do things with the hope of no one ever finding out, you're more likely to engage in conduct like that, and that would lead you to do things that you should not do. And I will actually close on that, is this last quote by Quentin L. Cook. One of your greatest protections against making bad choices is to not put on any mask of anonymity. If you ever find yourself wanting to do so, please know that it is a serious sign of danger and one of the adversary's tools to get you to do something you should not do. Just know that when you're on the internet, whether you're gaming, social media, any other forms of different applications that are out there, sometimes you might feel a tendency to do something that you wouldn't do in person. Know that that is the adversary, Satan, trying to get you to do something that you should not do. And I hope that this information has been helpful, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much for letting me share this with you today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Charles. And now we have 15 minutes for questions. We talk about this information, and there is a big job now for religious leaders and religious places, the church, the mosque, the temple. All of them should work hard together to protect the youth, the families, members, and so on. Now I want to ask about the technical protection, technical safety for children on the screen. When they stay on the screen, how can the parents protect my child technically?
And that's a question for me?
Yes, Mr. Wood.
Well, one of the things that I did for my children was there are apps. I think I use Screen Time, and I think that's embedded in iPhones now, and you can download it for Android. Mm-hmm. And you can limit specifically which applications they can use. You can limit how long they can use them. There's also more advanced ways like URL filtering on routers, on your home Wi-Fi routers and things like that, which I implemented at home for like I said, I did a lot of stuff to protect my children. And then I found out that they like to hang out at this other kid's house, but the other kid liked hanging out at our house. And so I asked my kids one day, why do you like hanging out at their house so much if he likes hanging out over here? And they said one thing, they said, internet. Because I had everything locked down. And so, yeah, I feel the Screen Time was a very effective tool. You can search for those things. You can also, I think you can pay for different services that, like, you can put a service on a device, but then it can be kind of hard to manage when you have laptops and TVs and all that, smartphones and tablets. But you can also use resources for the internet, like your internet provider, that will screen certain keywords. They'll block sites with certain keywords and things like that. But just know, and I learned this lesson the hard way, was know that passwords, screen locks, like all of that stuff. But just know that despite all of your best efforts, like, they're gonna find a way. So you really have to, probably the best protection is to talk to the children and help them understand and make sure that they're making good choices. I remember one time, I had my computer set up. It was set up to lock automatically after 5 minutes of inactivity. Mm-hmm. And it was a busy day, and we came home, what was it? We were leaving. We had the children, some of the younger children with us, and we left, and within 3 minutes or so of us leaving, my other son got home and the screen on the laptop had not locked yet. And so he went in and he typed in a website that he had heard someone talking about at school. And within that 5-minute window, he was able to, for the first time, he was able to access pornography. And he shared that with me later. And I felt so terrible because of all the measures I had put into place. And the thing was my password on my computer did not lock. It did not lock quick enough.
Yes, something, don't worry about it.
Thank you, sir. Another question concerning the screen, the child. Is there kind of schedule, timetable for the child to stay on the screen? Yani 1 hour daily, 30 minutes, 2 hours. How can the parents manage this time in front of the screen?
Oh, you know, there's a lot of, it's a lot of different approaches. What my wife and I did was we presented alternatives. And so, we would encourage them to, play baseball outside in the yard when they were younger, or maybe play with the kids in the neighborhood. So you have alternatives. That's the one thing. And then maybe things that you would do together as a family, so wholesome shows or things like that, or content that you could look at together. And then when it's just individual on the tablet or the phone or something like that, there are apps. Like I said, screen time worked very effectively for me, and you can easily you can block everything, or you can block specific applications. You can set time. You can set time limits for each thing, and then certain things that never have a time limit. Like for my children, they had the online or the digital version of scriptures and things like that, so they could always have access to those things. And then there's even a feature to where if they do certain things, like they've done their chores, they can get 30 more minutes and things like that, and the parents can approve it. And it's all linked to your phone, so they could be in another room and they could ask for, hey, I did my chores, and you could approve 30 minutes, whatever. But in my experience, the best tool is to sit down with the children, talk to them about the importance of making good decisions and things like that, and just that's probably the best thing.
Thank you. So sit down and keep talking, advising the children till they control themselves.
Yes. Yeah, and that's because that's a tool for life. We need to become masters of ourselves. And another thing too is, like I shared that story about my children going to their friend's house. It's very important to know who they're spending time with, because if I can do all I can to lock down my children's devices and our internet at home, but if they go to their friend's house and they've got the game console and then they've got the internet and all that, then they're able to get around to every measure that I put in place. And so it's good to get to know their friends and talk to all of them. And I would always encourage everyone to come to my house instead of going to someone else's house, because I know what I'm responsible for what happens in my home. I can control that to as best I can, and so I just felt better that way. So.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Still, we have like 7 minutes before going to the next session B with Mr. David. And anybody has question can write it on the chat. Any question, please send it. If you have question, we can talk. Any question?
Like Mohammed might have raised his hand.
Okay.
I don't know how to answer that.
Go ahead. Muhammad.
Hello, Mr. Woods. My name is Muhammad. I just have one quick question. It's more of a commentary about what you just said, plus a question. I think the use of electronics and the use of social media have been accelerated right now by COVID-19. So screen time, and I'm not talking about the app, I'm talking about the concept of screen time. The screen time has been something that we could not control as parents. You have your kid, you think he's doing his homework, but you never know. So it's something that is so delicate that you cannot just have a certain control over it. And plus something that is like a unavoidable wave, if you will. This is a whole different generation, a whole different era. This is the future. I cannot ask my son or my daughter not to be on a computer, because that is the future. This is where they're going to be doing most of their work. There are jobs right now that we have that will disappear in the next 10 days and next 10 years. And there are jobs that don't even exist now, and they will be available in the next 10 years. So we don't even know the sheer magnitude of this. So how do we find the happy medium, if you will? Because this is, I'm not going to use the term war on values, but our values are in jeopardy because of this. And so it's not something that we can just, say, okay, we put an app here, or we put a certain measure, we put coercive methods or rewarding methods, and say this is how it's going to work. It's almost like if I'm telling you in the 60s and the 50s, don't give your son, a pen. This is it. You have to give him that pen. He has to learn. And how do we do that? I think it starts at home. It starts before the kid even sees the screen. As I was telling my son right now, and he's listening with me, I said, I don't want to look over your shoulder. I want you to understand why I think what I think about your screen time. I want you to wholly believe that what I'm telling you is good for you. Even if I'm not there, you're not going to be one of those kids. Oh, my dad is not here now. Now let me log into this, or let me find a way around it. And so how do we instill this in our children as a value is the question. More than anything else, whether they see it, whether they're going to be exposed to it one way or the other. So if you have any takeaway from this, or if you have any answer to basically this vague question, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. As I was preparing this, I realized that like COVID has completely changed things. And my youngest son was a senior in high school, and so he's been pretty good at managing things himself. And oh man, I can't imagine. And I understand the way the things that I experienced even 5 years ago, it, like you said, have accelerated so much now, and it is a part of life. And so it's a really good question. I feel like I've never been one to shelter my children from things. I want them to experience the world, and then when they encounter negative things or things that you wouldn't want them to experience on a regular basis, I take that as an opportunity to talk to them about it and get to see how they feel about it, and then collectively discuss approaches forward and how to handle that when they encounter it in the future. Another thing that comes to mind is the missionaries of our church. They always work in companionships. There's at least 2 missionaries that serve together, and they each have their own device. And what they do is at least once a week, they swap devices, and then they just as a means of accountability, they let each other look through their own devices. So if they had been doing something they shouldn't have been doing or something, they know that their companion's going to be reviewing that. And to me, accountability, I understand what you said about you don't want to look over your child's shoulder, and I completely agree. But accountability is an eternal concept. We are accountable to our God. And so I feel like accountability is something that it is important to include on our everyday life as well. Those are some thoughts that I share. I don't know if that answered your question. Was that sufficient?
I guess it touches on the basics. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. But ultimately, like I was saying earlier, really the most important thing is to talk to your children, talk to the people that you love. I share these same messages with my siblings. You know, we're all grown adults, and talk about the threats on the internet and the just the way that hackers, you know, the approaches, the means and methods that they have now that they can attack us and things like that. But take the time to talk to the people that you love and help them understand the importance of these things, and really you have to let them go out and be agents unto themselves, and then but check in. Don't just leave them to the world. You check in with them as often as needed, and follow up with them and talk, and because it's an ongoing process, and it needs regular attention.
Thank you, Mr. Charles Woods. Thank you, Muhammad. And now with the session 8B, second session today, it will be with Mr. David Sanchez. Let me make introduction for him. He is IT specialist and network planner for U.S. Army. He also served in the Church of Jesus Christ in Cobras Cove, Texas. And he gonna talk about cybersecurity, online dark web protection, excuse me, protection against cyber criminals and other behind the screen. Go ahead, Mr. David. Thank you.
I appreciate the introduction. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much to the Aman Institute for inviting me here. I want to see if I can share my screen real quick. See if that's and share. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one thing I was asked to talk about is the dark web. Hello? And specifically about the dark web and extremism, and how they correlate. A lot of introduction of what I'm going to talk about was discussed previously, specifically with the cyber threats that are associated with the dark web. So the way we can best look at this is what the internet looks like as a whole. When it first came out, the internet was more or less a surface-based product that was developed. So, and if you're familiar with the concept of the dark web or the deep web, and I'll describe the difference between the two here in this session. It's basically, if you look at an iceberg, on the top of the surface is what we see is. It could be a massive thing. And when you look at the internet is a very large thing. We call that the surface web. It's the things that we see. That's where, that's what we normally participate in. But there's another aspect of the web that we associate with, and that's the deep web. It's the things that are underlined underneath the existing network architecture of the internet. And then we have the dark web, which is the harder to get to areas or surfaces of the internet. So what's the difference between these? Is a couple of things. Well, the surface web, the ones that we have, that's where you're going to find your Google, your Snapchat, your Instagram, the things, your banking. That's where the normal user today will primarily operate and interact with the surface web. If you go to Google and you type in Aman Institute, for example, you're going to get something that could be indexed, a website that is directed to by Google. It's basically a catalog that the browser has given, and it gives you information. And the other thing is it's accessible. Anyone can go on the internet and type something in a Google browser or Bing or a Yahoo, and they'll receive information, get results from their search. Also in the surface web, you do find some illegal activity. And then with that, it can, but the biggest thing is a lot of the things in the surface internet, it can be referenced by your internet service provider. So in essence, the things that you do on the surface web is tracked for the most part. It can be tracked, and we talked about footprinting in the previous discussion. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the term cookies, but your activity or your child's activity can be tracked either through your browser history or your internet service provider. It will let a person know where they have gone along the surface web. The deep web, there's aspects of the deep web. The difference is they're unindexed websites. So in other words, you can't just go into let's say that your child looks up how to get to a deep web and identifies a Tor browser, which is what is used to access the deep and the dark webs. That associated with a virtual private network, a VPN, which creates that tunnel to access unindexed websites. So why do we have these? I'll cover later in this discussion, but just know that when an individual starts interacting with the dark and deep webs, you're dealing with unindexed websites that you won't find normally in a Google search. Often that the accessibility, you have to know the website name, the URL. You also may have to have a password because it would be encrypted. But it can still be referenced loosely by the internet service provider. If a member of your family, if your youth access the dark or deep web, they can identify that this person did go to a browser, but what they've done in that browser, that's where things start to get a little cloudy for the average user. It's a way to kind of mask and hide. And when we talked previously about anonymity, creates a little bit more anonymity within the activity that a person conducts within the dark or the deep web. And then the dark web, the biggest difference between the deep and dark web is this is where a lot more of the extremist activity and the illegal activity occur, to include marketplaces. But again, an individual must know or should know the place in which they're looking for. It's not just going to pop out as easy as it would a surface web internet search. So a person really has to know what they're doing to get to the dark web. So here's some things I'll say before I move on. If a youth or a child knows about a Tor browser, if they know about a VPN, and they actually find a free VPN and access it, they still need more information to do that. So to get there, it's something that someone needs to know. It's not as common as what we do on the average internet. So like I said, both the deep and the dark, they make up the deep web is what they're running. So a couple of things we want to kind of dive in a little bit of the history of the dark web. And the way I want to do it is a little bit more interactive, just kind of a little quick game to kind of get everybody waking up. But kind of a quick practice. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the old game Concentration, but basically it's a series of pictures that create a word. So for example, and the way I'd like to do this, if you have your chat open, just go to your chat and you can submit your answer on the chat. But so for this, the foot and the ball, foot plus ball, obviously the answer is going to be football. And And then a more complicated thing, we have the Instagram symbol. So Insta plus ant plus break plus very fast kid. Answer will be instant breakfast. So I hope everybody gets the way this game is played. So the first part, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. It's the first question is, without doing a Google search, is who invented the dark web? And if you have an answer, or if you want to just chime in, here's your hints, and I'll give you about a minute or two to see if you can answer this quick game. You can raise your hand, or again, just put it in the chat. Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts? I'll just pop it in there. So the U.S. the U.S. military. You know, when I made this, I realized this could be a very successful part or a huge failure. So I don't know whether or not we achieved it. But the U.S. military actually created it initially, and the purpose that they used it for was to send encrypted information for secure and private communication. That obviously, just like the internet, when that was created in the U.S. government laboratory as well, it expanded it into something that we have now, something that's an incredible tool, something that we're using right now to reach a ton of different families all over the United States, and broadcasting on YouTube simultaneously to reach an even larger population. This is the beauty of this tool that was created. Now, just like all tools that are created, there are some good things that we can find of. So is the dark web a good or a bad thing? A lot of times when you hear the term dark, it's usually associated with something that's negative or bad. But what about the people who rely on virtual private networks to push out information when they exist in a government that doesn't allow them the ability to speak freely about the things that are occurring? They use this avenue to get their message out. So the ability to have freedom of speech is one thing that gives that back to people who don't have the freedoms that a lot of countries do. Also, internet privacy and confidentiality. Some people don't like being tracked, and it's not because they want to do something malicious, but it's to protect themselves from people who basically want to do harm or use their talents and skills and knowledge to affect those people using it correctly. And I'm sure we can think of a lot of tools that we have to where a person can use something correctly, but they find it that in the hands of the wrong person, they could use that same tool to do something negatively. Also, secure transfers and information, that's another part. And what is being conducted now is to use it for counterterrorism via spider webs or spider crawlers to kind of counteract the negative message that happens. So being a little bit more interactive, who can tell me some of the bad things that they've heard associated with the dark web or the deep web? And this is opened up to anybody of what they've heard about the dark web that goes on here. And I'll pause for any comments.
Okay, Jonah here has a comment.
Yeah, so I've heard
Yeah. I've heard that some people will stream their crimes onto the dark web or sell illegal stuff like illegal drugs and things.
Exactly. Just like I said, with the ability of confidentiality, and we talked about anonymity, there are certain people out there that will use this avenue, this medium, to mask themselves to promote what they're doing. Is there anybody else that has something different that they'd like to share? Okay. So here's some things that we look at when you look at kind of the association of how we use the dark web, or how the dark web is used, excuse me. Different types of speech. It can, like Jonah was saying, it conceals the criminal activity. It also provides illegal services, illegal firearms, drugs, a lot of things that you can not normally find, you can easily access if you know the markets available in the dark web. And like I said, that's something that is a known, must be a known thing to access. And then kind of like what I'm bringing up is extremist organizations and recruiting. No different than the person that is trying to conceal themselves to have their message heard about what's going on in their country that could be an injustice. There are also people that use this same approach to push a message or an ideology that is contrary to what we try to push to our youth, to our students, and that is to be a loving and kind person, not only to the people in whom we assimilate to or associate with, but to everybody that we meet. So these are some of the things that we see when in reference to the dark web. And then kind of the middle ground, we also, with dark web, people that are in a different country, but they want to access certain websites in another country but they can't because they're region blocked. They'll go through a VPN so they can access region-free content. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's something that a lot of military members can use, or people that are overseas from their home, they can use to reach things that may be blocked by their country. And it could be something very simple as a YouTube or whatever the case is, a social media that's currently blocked by that region. And then, like I said, the in between here is the anonymity, and it's good. It can be used for good and bad. So how do these line up? Like I said before, for every good tool that's made, someone has always found a way to incorporate something to make it a negative tool. So I kind of bridge the gap between what we find is good with the dark web to what an individual has used to create that negative impact of using the dark web. So what are the hazards associated with the dark web? And Charles Woods brought up some early hazards with just the internet alone, and they don't stop existing just because you're in an anonymous or a more secure network. In fact, there's an argument that even with a VPN or going to the dark web, the anonymity is kind of a pseudo anonymity. But there's also a counter argument saying that once you get on a virtual private network in that secure tunnel that you've created, you become completely masked, and you're just known to have visited a virtual private network as opposed to what you're doing while you're in that private network. So a couple of things is social engineering, which basically is a person that's trying to gather information by pretending to be someone else. That is a way to where they get us people either through email or text to communicate with you. And what Brother Woods also talked about is the medium that exists in video games. Any avenue or any communication link that a person has to draw information or to gain rapport on an individual and continue to draw information, that's a level of social engineering. Also with malware, because you're going into those aspects where people want to remain anonymous, you can not only get affected by the malware, but people also look for malware to purchase to use at a later time based on what their needs are for any criminal activity. This is where you find more of the forums associated with hackers and phishing and tracking, and like what was discussed already, illegal activity because of the anonymity of the dark web and how it's associated. So I put this picture up here. When you look at the dark web, you can look at it in a couple of things, one a way to good, but others, it just depends on the person's intent, right? And we talked about, and I believe it was Muhammad who talked about how we prepare our youth to manage these kind of things. Because, you know, at one point or another, whether either through curiosity or through actual intent, someone may, one of our children who become adults may actually go into the dark web. So what I would say is, how do we prepare our children to walk in the world that they live in right now? Because I'm 41 years old, a lot different as a youth than my son who's 16 lives in now. There's a lot more avenues for harm to be introduced to the youth without the parents' consent. And despite our best efforts, there's still opportunities for people to reach out, and because of the broad surface area of the internet as it relates to our children's or our youth's presence, to include ourselves. So what I would say for this, when internet, surface, deep or dark web, the best approach to that is, one, when you're looking at cybersecurity, have updated virus software. Make sure that your browser, if you're using one, is secured to your best ability, to where it's not inhibiting what you need to do. And if you find that balance to where you want to be more secure, what I would say is to have profiles represented for the people that need it. So for me, my profile may look different. My security may look different than what I give my 16-year-old son versus what I give my 8-year-old son. So, you know, you can create different profiles. There's apps and there's services that you can do for to create an easier process to kind of limit, not eliminate, limit the amount of exposure that's for our children. So my second topic is on extremism and how organizations use this dark web for or the deep web for their agenda. And I'm going to use the term agenda and some ideologies sometimes synonymously, and I do apologize, but it's kind of how I see it. But definition of extremism is the advocacy of extreme measures or views and often radicalization. We've heard the terms, especially in the US, far left, far right. Who's right or who's wrong? It just depends on the individual and their individual beliefs. But the most common associated with extremism is political and religious ideals, from my perspective. What drives the person to believe and to actually act. There's also another definition called violent extremism, where it's gone beyond the conversation or the negative speech that's presented by an individual to another group or another individual, but supports the act of violence in achieving political, religious, and ideological goals. So where do these groups exist in the dark web, and why is this something that we need to talk about? So based on what we discussed, who can kind of share what their thoughts are with why would extremist groups be so interested in having a dark web presence? And I'll pause for any comments.
I think why, like extremists like to use the dark web, because like you say, it's no, they have a freedom to speak there, and it's not easy to track it, and then they are kind of like believe it's be hard for typical people just to track who is behind those actions. So using dark web can help them to eliminate those possibilities to track them.
Yes, and I appreciate your comments, and you're absolutely correct. So just like what we talked about, the key term when we talk about the dark web, it's anonymity, and they use this so they can push the message out without being identified. So my next question is, how can we avoid interacting with these websites and ensure the safe time while using the internet? And this is both for what, and I want to expand on this question by saying, for parents, what can we do, or what are some preventative measures that we can do to help minimize the amount of exposure that our youth have on the dark web? And if there's a youth on, what can you do? So there's two people I'd like to hear from. Is one from a parent, what can we do to protect the youth? And from the youth, what decisions can you make, or what can you do to kind of prevent exposure from these type of organizations and groups? And I'll pause and turn this over to the collective.
Hello, Mr. Sanchez. Can I pick up the mic?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. All right. So when we talk about the dark web now we're veering off into a whole different terrain. Meaning the dark web, this is not something that's, I guess, that is easily understood by most, because you could be surfing the internet all your life and never, ever stumble upon it. This is not something that you stumble upon. Dark web is not something you stumble upon. It's not something that, oh, by the way, there was this link, I'm gonna click on it, and now you're in the dark web. No, that's not how it works. There are specific ways on how to get to the dark web. And so here, a measure, this is where Charles was talking about earlier. This is where we gonna establish some real technical, if you will, IT measures into even being able to get into the dark web. That's what I think it is. Because, I'm still mesmerized, I guess, and I'm still amazed. I'm still amazed on how we still have something called dark web, since it is lurking with, all kinds of nefarious stuff. I wholeheartedly believe, not just because somebody wants anonymity or he wants some privacy, that's why he's going into the dark web. But that's a whole topic, by itself, because where do you draw the line between privacy, between freedom, and getting into nefarious consequences for for most. I think this debate is as old as the hills, if you will. So I'm not gonna get into that, but yeah, the dark web is not something, again, it's not something that you just stumble upon. I would suggest that there has to be some sort of firewall, if you will, in your desktop, in your laptops, and this something has to be monitored, regularly with the kids. So I guess that's how I would probably prevent my kids and everybody in the family from getting into it. Thank you.
I appreciate the comments. So I will say there's, and I had this discussion before this with one of the women in my church, but if we looked at if we did a good job, and you said this once, you don't want to look over your children's shoulder, because you want to give them that freedom to choose. You want to give them that that respect as they get older to make their own choices. And the freedom to choose is a very huge responsibility. So one, having our kids understand that is a great thing, which starts like what Charles was saying about educating them early about the responsibilities of choices. I would also say, as a parent, if I saw a Tor browser on my son's phone, or I saw a VPN application on my son's phone, I may want to have that conversation with him about what his intent is for using a Tor browser, because I know what it's used for. It's not used to surf regular internet, or it can be. But I want him to talk. I want to have that discussion with them. If I see applications like that, or if I stumble upon history to where I see VPN, best websites to visit on the dark web, and I left a quote here at the bottom. Curiosity can also lead us to seek out unpleasant and often painful outcomes. And I have the reference in the back. I didn't put that, but I didn't create that, but somebody much smarter and more agile thinking did, in reference to just the harm that things can do with curiosity. And oftentimes, especially with our youth, curiosity is probably one of the biggest things that drives them down a pathway. And referencing that previous that slide, down that alleyway, what's down there? I'm curious. I'm going to keep walking, and I'm going to keep going. And they could come out fine. They could make those right choices as they're walking. But is that something that they should do, or is that something that they can avoid? And what is their desire for that curiosity to go visit things like that? And that's the discussion that parents should always have with their youth. In my thoughts, to have that open dialogue and that open discussion, and create that honest communication. And I think what boils down to with our youth, I'm a father of 4. I have 2 teenagers, one young man, one young woman, and I can see the curiosity that they have. They're curious because they don't know. Who better to teach them than their father or their mother? So when we identify curiosities as watchmen of our children, as the primary watchmen of our children, it's very important for the parent to kind of intercept that like a football. And for the youth who are listening, the curiosity that you experience, one, is normal, because I was 14, 15, 16, 17, so on and so forth at one point in my life, and my world was filled with curiosity because I wanted to know. I had a genuine question to know and understand just things. Sometimes there were things that were good. Sometimes they may have driven towards things that were not the best, not the best things. What I was grateful for was having a father and mother that I could turn to and ask these questions without ridicule and without consequence. That helped me more than the times that I went and chose to seek out that information or that knowledge myself. like the bottom of the quote, can often lead to painful outcomes. And for the most part, they did. So, but I'd encourage both parents and youth. It's all about the communication and relationship we have with our kids. I think I'm over my time, so I'd like to conclude by this slide. Tools can be helpful or harmful. We have a picture of an axe, a knife, a chainsaw, and a computer. It depends on how we use them. I want you all to remember that. It depends on how we use our tools, both parents and youth. And here are the references that I had for this presentation. I'd like to pause and thank you all again for this this opportunity to discuss with you all. And I turn it back over to Imam.
Thank you so much, Mr. David, for this beneficial information. And now the time for questions, if anybody has a question.
Yes, I have a question for you, Sanchez. So, as in now, we all know social media is there, you know, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all those apps are there. And then people using them. Most of the people know, okay, if you use those apps, is a way to track your user location by your IP and stuff. So using a dark web, like you was mentioning, a VPN and stuff, people can use that. I don't want to cheat, I just want to know, since you say if you see a VPN or other apps in a device, that should raise a warning flag to you. So is it people can use those tools, just to mask, the user location and stuff, in social media.
So once you push something on social media, it's out there. You can use a VPN. It will allow you the opportunity to navigate through sites, but once you got to understand how Instagram works. So Instagram, once you push something out there, once an information it doesn't mask your information or your post or your picture. The only thing it does is kind of create a secure tunnel for you to navigate to certain avenues, certain sites. I'll give you an example. When I'm away at work, or I'm away from my work and not connected physically, I can use a VPN to secure connect to my work, authenticate who I am, and allows me to enter. Like I said, with a VPN, there has to be purpose for us to.
I'm leaving upstairs. Okay.
What I would also say with VPN, if you want to use more secure, if you're talking about banking, talking about just staying, no one tracking you to create ads, cookies, that kind of stuff, a VPN would benefit. But again, it depends on the purpose of what you're using it for.
Thank you. Any other question? So again, so the safety starts from the family, from the parents, from the religious leaders, religious places to protect the family, the children, the youth. They should work hard to protect the family and the youth. And I'm very, very happy for that interfaith that benefit all for the community member. Any question?
Omar.
Sorry? Anybody has a question? Okay. So at the end of that session, we ask Almighty God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect all and make all safe in their families. And we thank all for your time attending and share the webinar. And a special thanking for Mr. Wood and Mr. David for their sharing their experience in the Aman Institute for Intellectual Security Safety. And also special thanking for Mr. Darian, who coordinates and make that session and that webinar come to the light, asking Almighty God protection, a blessing for all. Ameen. Thank you so much, and see you in next session after 1 month, inshallah, and different topic, inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, Mom. Bye, Mom. Assalamu
alaikum.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Darian. Thank
Have
you.
a very blessed day.
Thank you. You too, as well.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate all you for coming out. Thank you.
Muhammad. Thank you, Habibi.
Thank you.